Hey guys, welcome back to Coach Hall Writes. In today's AP Lang FAQ video, we're going to be talking about the rhetorical situation. So what is it and why do you need to know this in order to write a rhetorical analysis essay? When you're looking at a nonfiction text like a speech, a letter, or even a longer work of nonfiction, you're going to need to identify the rhetorical situation. So you're going to start by identifying the writer or speaker, and then the audience, the context, and exigence. So context is like historical context, and exigence is like the catalyst, what prompted the writer to write. Then you need to look for the purpose and the message. Now, those tend to come in later because you might be able to infer the purpose or message before you've actually read it, depending on what it is. But as you read the passage, those two things should become more clear. So one thing to keep in mind is that there are two acronyms that are commonly used in AP Lang classes. I know there are more than just these two, but the two that I've heard the most are Soapstone and Space Cat. Now, I used to teach Soapstone. I've moved over to Space Cat, but to be perfectly honest, they get you to the same place. I just happen to like Space Cat a little bit better. So if you're like, what on earth are those things? Soapstone, or SOAP, if we're looking at the rhetorical situation, stands for speaker, occasion, audience, and purpose. So occasion just means the context and the exigence. It's sort of combined into the word occasion. And then space stands for speaker, purpose, audience, context, and exigence. It's one thing to be able to list off the different elements of the rhetorical situation, but it's another thing entirely to actually be able to analyze these elements effectively as you're writing a rhetorical analysis essay. So I want to show you guys something that I made for my students over the summer. My hope is that this will help them as they tackle rhetorical analysis. So I'm sorry it's cut off a little bit, but you can see that there are different tabs here. This one is for the speaker. So there are questions that you want to ask yourself. Now, I have included these in previous videos, but I thought it would be good to put these all in one place. So you want to ask yourself, why is the speaker the right person to write this piece? What are his or her credentials? How would you characterize that person? And then I've got some sentence frames over there on the right and also an example. So if you're curious about how to analyze the speaker, those are some things that you might consider. Now, for purpose, a lot of times students latch onto one purpose and then they repeat that phrasing throughout the whole essay, especially when you're writing a timed essay and there's a lot of pressure. It can be really difficult to vary your verb choice. And one of the things that you're going to want to do as you write an essay is make sure that you're using rhetorically accurate verbs. You want to be very specific. So this particular slide just shows different purposes and some synonyms for those purposes. Now, there could be other purposes out there as well, but these are some of the ones that are most common. So now let's talk about the audience. Some passages like a letter or a speech might have a very obvious audience, but other times an article, for instance, might have a less obvious audience. So you might have to think about who would be reading this particular publication, or based on the subject of the article, who would be interested in this. But one thing to keep in mind is that you want to ask yourself, what are the audience's needs, desires, and values? And then you also want to ask yourself, what is the relationship between the speaker and the audience? Because that can help you understand some of the choices that the writer is making. So these are just some things that I would suggest for the audience. As you can see, we've got some more sentence frames here and also an example. So I know AP Lang is not a history class. However, I do believe that there is a close relationship between English and history. And so because of that, it's important to understand the historical context, because sometimes the historical context greatly influences what a writer writes or what a speaker says. And so one thing you need to do is actually read the prompt, because the prompt is going to tell you when the speech was delivered or when the letter was written. And so you need to know that. Take a second to ask yourself, what do I know about this time period? What was going on locally, nationally, or globally? You don't have to be a history expert, but chances are you might know something that's relevant. If you do have a lot of background knowledge about a particular topic, it is appropriate to weave it into your essay if it is relevant. But don't go off on a tangent, because this is not a history lesson. So now let's talk about the exigence. A lot of times there are going to be some clues about the exigence in the prompt. So for instance, if it says that it is a commencement speech, that means that it is a graduation speech. Presumably the person was invited to speak to the graduates. If it is a eulogy, it's a funeral speech. So presumably the person had some sort of close relationship with the person who passed away and they've been asked to speak. It could be a convention speech for a political convention, or it could could be that they're writing a letter and maybe they are writing in response to a letter that they've already received. So these are things that relate to the exigence. The final component of the rhetorical situation is the message or the argument. So what is the overall takeaway that the audience is supposed to have, or what is the main point that the writer is trying to make? Now, sometimes prompts are going to actually tell you the message of blank or the argument of blank, but you don't want to just take the words that are given in the prompt and repeat them over and over again. That is a surface level message or a surface level argument. You want to actually dig a little bit deeper. So I've included several questions here on this slide. These are things that you can ask yourself in order to hopefully not only understand the message better, but also to develop your commentary. If you are an AP Lang teacher and you would like your own copy of the slideshow that I showed in this video, I will include a link to it as well as a link to similar slideshows in the description box below. If you found this video helpful, please do me a huge favor and give the video a thumbs up. Also, make sure that you're subscribed with your notifications turned on. And until next time, guys, happy writing!